Hello, welcome back to my channel. Today I am going to be doing some plant maintenance on 3 of my ferns. I have several different ferns, but these are 3 of them, and they all need something. What I've found is these plants prefer to be evenly moist because they're ferns. I don't know that all ferns are that way, but these ones are. And so I'm going to be transplanting 2 of them into self-watering containers. And I am going to be just doing a little hack on this Rosy Maiden fern. So if you're interested in that, stay tuned, and I'll do that right now. The first fern I'm going to be working on is this Rosy Maidenhair fern. And I have a Maidenhair fern, a different one that's actually just a Maidenhair fern, and that one's really lovely as well. You can tell the plants aren't doing well when it comes to ferns if you don't see new green fronds coming up. If everything is brown, it is not happy. And even though I got some nice green leaves here, you can see we've got some brown, which is not that big of a deal. We'll just simply pull that off or cut it off. What I'm going to do for this one is clean up some of the dead stuff, and then I am going to do a top dressing of sphagnum moss. I have found that tends to work pretty well in keeping them happy. So this is a very simple one. So what I have in this bucket is some sphagnum moss that was dried, and I simply rehydrated it, and I'm simply going to use it as a top dressing to go around. Oh, I guess I should cut it first, huh? Alright. First thing we're going to do is we're going to trim off the brown fronds, and in some cases it's pretty natural part of the life cycle for ferns to turn brown, and then they drop spores and they do all of that kind of stuff. But for this, I just need to get all these brown fronds off here, just to make it look better. It'll help to initiate growth as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to take the sphagnum moss, I'm going to squeeze it. I want it to be moist but not sopping. And I'm simply just going to top dress around the container. I did this to begin with, and then I pulled it off for some reason, which I don't know why I did. But yeah, when the ferns are happy, they got new growth coming. Especially we're in spring. We're just entering spring, and most of the plants should start growing because of the amount of light. I'm in the northern hemisphere, because the daylight hours start increasing, and it triggers the plant to start growing. So again, I'm just gonna put some nice moss in there, and then that's all I'm going to do for this one. I'm going to simply put it back in its container and keep my normal watering routine. My next fern I'm going to go through is my rabbit's foot fern. This is the only one I had. I've had it for quite a while. We've had a love-hate relationship. Sometimes it's looked really good, other times it's not looked good at all. So what I found is grouping it with other ferns, and I keep this one in my bathroom, it does a really good job. These little roots coming out, those are the aerial roots. If you don't really want to bury them, they need to have air, and they grow out over the end. Some people don't like them because they look like tarantulas, but I don't mind them. I like different characteristics of different plants. But the soil in here has really been eroded. There's really not a lot of good soil left in here. So what we're going to do is we're going to break it down. I'm going to repot using a self-watering container. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this out and get a good look at it. And this one's pretty wet. I watered it recently. It's plenty wet. But I've got just a ton of areas here where I don't have much of anything going on. So I'm going to knock some of this out just to really get it into some fresh medium. This is really, really wet. Really not a problem. Take some of the dead stuff out of there. Because ferns like to be evenly moist, this is a little bit too wet, but because I like to be evenly moist, I'm not going to cut in additional perlite. So I'm going to start by just putting a little bit of soil on the bottom of the container, And I'm going to try to get this down in there. Again, the crown's going to want to be a little bit above because of those aerial roots, which is fine. It's just kind of a messy job. So I'm going to tuck it in, going around, trying to be delicate around those aerial roots and give them a spot. You'll see that the fronds, and I'll do a close-up so you can see, the fronds are actually growing out of the aerial roots, which is pretty interesting. So I'm going to tuck this in, really push down on it. Because it's already pretty wet, I'm simply going to fill only the bottom of the reservoir. I'm not going to pre-moisten the upper part of the soil at all. And our goal will be to get these aerial roots to kind of hang out over the pot a little bit. So here's a close-up to show that the fronds are actually coming, I don't know if you can see it or not, out of the aerial root right there. Little tarantula looking leg. There's actually new growth coming out of those. Pretty critical not to bury them though. One of the other things that I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of the sphagnum moss, the hydrated sphagnum moss on the top, just to try to keep the moisture in on the very top as well. But just a very, very small amount, only where I've got bare soil. I'm not burying those little rabbit's foots. My next fern is this little crocodile fern, and I have struggled to make this thing look happy since the day I've got it. It was not a big one, it was a small one. Then I have frond that kind of busted over and too wet, too dry. So I've just decided I'm going to move this one as well into a self-watering container. So first I'm going to start by trimming off some of these dead fronds, or the brown or dying fronds, just to clean it up so it looks better. Got some fronds that are crispy on here. You can hear it probably on the mic. It's a little bit crazy. I'm going to clean it up. And the soil in this one has really rescinded as well. It's just kind of a mess. So I'm going to cut this longer frond off. My guess, this was the propagation frond that they used, but it is just not looking right compared to everything else. I'm getting rid of it. All right, so this one as well is pretty wet because I just watered it recently. I'm going to break some of this soil out of here too, just to try to get it out of here. Ferns tend to be shallow rooted, and I'm just going to try to break this apart a little bit, see if I can get to the bottom of the root system. See what's attached and what's working and what's not. Here's a little piece that's alive. Some of this other stuff just looks nasty. I don't know if it's alive or not. So rather than throw these things out, I've decided that rehab is kind of my last ditch effort to rehab them. And I'm assuming it's me. It's never the plant's fault. I just need giving it what it needs to be happy. I want to get these dead fronds off here. Looking at them is just painful. And then I'm just going to kind of pull the dead parts off. That works pretty good. The browning tips. Alright, so I have us zoomed in here. Again, this is the repotting of the crocodile fern after I'm kind of breaking it apart to rejuvenate it. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to move these to the side. I'm going to fill my container here. This is another self-watering pot with just plain potting mix. I'm not going to cut anything in because it's going to hold extra moisture this way. And I'm putting it in a self-watering pot to maintain an even moisture as well. So we're simply going to start by trying to get some soil in here. And I have these handy dandy little shovels that I got from a plant in online shopping. If I bought a container or whatever, they're just cheap little shovels, but they work really good for things like this. So what I'm going to do is I am going to try to plant this plant around the perimeter. You can see that really falls down really nice, which is fine. I want to get the soil up and around, and then I'll kind of press. I'm going to leave a little bit of a lip around here, and I am going to backfill with some damp sphagnum moss to keep it hydrated on the top as well. I'm hoping that this works. Like I said, I've never gotten this thing to look beautiful, and I want it to look beautiful. So I'm going to just tuck it in there, and I'm going to add some extra soil. Just a little other scoop here. Go in with a little scoop. Get some other soil in here. So I'm just trying to make sure I get the dead stuff out of there, dead leaves and stuff, and then hoping that this will take off nicely for me. So this is the third piece. Shoving it down. And then this is just a random little piece. It's got a root on it. And I'll shove it in here somewhere under these other leaves. So I'm going to come back in, I'm going to put some more soil on top. I'm going to gently try to get it on there. I'm not trying not to bury the fronds any more than I have to, because it will stop the photosynthesis on those leaves, and we don't want to do that. Just going to clean this up a little bit. Looks a little better. Got a drop tray underneath here. I'm going to push down just gently on this. And I'm really hoping that these self-watering pots will solve a lot of my problems. Some of my plants don't need extra attention, and they do just fine. But this one in particular has been a problem for me. So I think this will help solve the issue. Just want to make sure that I have good contact, that all the roots have contact with soil. Hopefully that will be fine. Tuck, tuck, tuck. Tap the soil just really, really gently. Then I'm going to bring some of that sphagnum moss you've seen me do the other ones. Off camera, I am squeezing the moisture out of it, and I'm going to just delicately, just ever so delicately, lift the fronds up, tuck it in, to give it a nice environment. A lot of times you can do propagation right in sphagnum moss, so this is kind of a double whammy. It's kind of good for that propagation, getting it to continue to grow, giving it some nutrients and things that it wants to have. And again, the sphagnum moss is coming out of a bog environment, and I think that crocodile fern, a lot of the ferns are used to a boggy environment too, so they're being. This would mean that they're neighbors. Kind of like, oh yes, I remember you. Sorry, a little quirky. Okay. Lift it up, tuck it in, just ever so slightly. So that concludes my repotting / rescue, kind of a rescue. Of some plants that were struggling, some ferns, which can be difficult to grow for a lot of folks. So if you have ferns in your collection, go ahead and try some of these plant hacks and see if they work for you. Also, bunching your plants together, putting them in a tight collage also helps ferns. So in this grouping again was a Rosy Maiden hair fern, which is kind of got a nice leaf to it. This is a rabbit's foot fern with the little aerial roots that look like tarantulas. You don't want to, as I've shown in this video, you don't want to cut these aerial roots off, because you can see I've got new growth coming out of those aerial roots. So again, this is a rabbit's foot fern. And then the last one, which I'm hoping to make this one beautiful, is this crocodile fern. It has just not been very happy, but I'm hoping that a new soil repot and breaking it apart, giving it a self-watering container, and doing a top dress with the sphagnum moss will help it. If this video is helpful, give us a thumbs up so YouTube knows to share this content with others. Thanks for stopping by. Have a great day.